Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here to race number 3 of season 51 of the RTG Talladega Challenge. We get ready for another 66 laps at the over 2-mile High Bank Super Speedway. We've had 2 different winners in the first 2 races. Will we see a third here tonight? I'm Seth Cole, being joined here this evening for the first time in the Flatout Racing Network booth by Zach Freeman. And first off, Zach, welcome to the booth.
Hey, thanks, Seth. It's good to be here. It's good to talk to you. It's good to be with everybody out in YouTube land watching tonight's race. We're here at Talladega. For sure going to be a good race. This Tally Challenge series has been a long time running over here with RTG. Started with MSR RTG merger, and here we are, season 51, race number 3. Seth, I'm really looking forward to this.
All right, so let's put you in the driver's seat here. Third race of the season. It's a series that obviously runs every single week at the same track, same setup, same number of laps. Is there a same strategy when you come into the third race as opposed to the first 2?
No. Your strategy from race number 1. This is a Talladega series, super speedways every week. You know, you might have some guys that run really, really well on a regular basis, but you never know when that big one's going to happen, when you might find yourself in some trouble. The biggest goal that you're going to have, as you have any other week, is make it to the end and make sure your car has all 4 wheels attached to it still.
Well, coming into this race, as mentioned, 2 drivers have been to victory lane already. Joe DeSpirito in the season opener, Grant Wesley taking the checkers last week. Obviously, those 2 are locked into the playoffs, provided they stay in the top 20 in the standings by the time we get to the end of the regular season. That means right now, 8 spots up for grabs to drivers to be able to point their way in. And we're going to talk here pre-race with one of the drivers that's just outside that cut line. He's had pretty good runs the last 2 races to start out this year. Driver the number 26 Ford. He's 13th in points, and that is Billy Elliser. Hey, Billy, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yeah, I got you, friend. What's up?
Well, we just mentioned the fact you've had some pretty good starts here to the season. You're 13th in the points. What's the strategy to be able to keep that consistency going here tonight?
Just consistency, friend.
You know, we obviously talk about being in the right place at the right time at Talladega Superspeedway. 2 weeks ago, it was a caution-free race, yet last week we saw quite a number of yellow flags. Where do you see this race falling in terms of maybe a clean race as opposed to a caution-filled race?
Well, I like to say a green race the whole way. It's about time we had one.
Well, Billy, obviously we know that you're going to be out there trying to see if you can put that car in victory lane. But, you know, if you can't do that, obviously we'd love to see you get a great finish here tonight. Move your way up there into the top 10, challenging for a playoff spot. So we wish you the best of luck here tonight.
Man, yeah, top 10 would be great.
Hey, Billy, Zach in the booth before we let you go. It looks like week number 1, we've got you with an 8th place finish. Last week, a little rougher with a 21st place finish. How are you feeling tonight? Is there anybody out there in particular that you really look forward to working with? Whose bumper do you really want to latch on to?
I really don't have many friends out here. So I just try to get with somebody that's running fast.
Well, obviously, Billy, we'll be keeping an eye on your number 26 here this evening. Best of luck to you. We're going to let you get out there and do a little bit more practice before you get on that grid.
There you go. Thanks, buddy.
And so, as drivers are currently out there just finishing up practice, let's give the starting lineup for tonight's event. And third straight week in a row here, Zach, that Joe DeSpirito is starting on the pole position alongside of Bob Seminara. I mean, nobody seems to be able to knock that 24 car off the pole.
Look, that 24 definitely seems to have it. 3 weeks running, start in P1. I'll tell you what, having that bird's eye view with that green flag, it's a good place to be. You don't have to worry about those jitters of starting in the middle of the pack, starting toward the back, wondering what's going to happen ahead of you. But I'll tell you what, something else that a lot of people I think take for granted out here is this is a 2.66 mile super speedway. So you think, wow, you just stay in the gas pedal, turn it nice and easy, you'll turn a quick time. I am here to tell you that is not the case. I am probably one of the all-time worst qualifiers at super speedways, always at the bottom of the board. So to be able to put a pole position up 3 weeks in a row, man, that's quite a feat.
Yeah, there's truly an art to qualifying at a super speedway, and Joe DeSpirito definitely seems to have that nailed down. He was only 2/1000ths faster than Bob Seminara here in qualifying. Row 2 is going to have Chuck McClure alongside of Bernie Mobbs. Row 3, Jessica Shelton and Bob Dixon. Josh Metallic and Donnie Garrett in row 4, and completing the top 10, Dave Melson, the driver who we just talked with, the 26 of Billy Elliser. In 11th will be Chris Elliott alongside of Richard Martin. That's row 6. Row 7, John Godfrey and Wiley Coate. Row 8 is going to be Perry Bond alongside of Carson Krentz, Glenn Harris, and Manny D. In row 9, and completing the top 20 will be Stefan Martel and Mike Rogers. 21st will be Cy Jones. 22nd, Sonny Tallman, who's had some great runs here in his first 2 races in the Tally Challenge. Terry Bombard is going to be lining up on the inside of row 12 alongside of Mark Paglia. Benoit Plord and Wayne Pribnow, going to be there in row 13. And then the rest of the drivers to qualify for this race that did not take time either will be Dante Ricky and Bobby Farrell. This seems to be a moniker for that 84 of Dante Ricky. He was able to work his way from the back to the front to win the season opener, obviously, and we'll wait and see if he can do the same thing here tonight.
You know, sometimes starting in that last spot, not always a bad thing. You know, then again, maybe I'm just trying to convince myself that that's the case because I always started in the back anyway. But it's not always a bad thing. You can kind of take your time, see how the flow is going to happen, you know, watch the rhythm of the cars around you and see exactly what it might look like for you at the end of the race. And of course, super speedway, most important thing, keep all the fenders on it.
Of course, with these type of cars and the type of racing that these drivers are going to be doing here for the 66 laps, to your point, even the slightest amount of damage, especially to the front of the race car, it may not necessarily hurt you in terms of keeping up with the draft, but even the slightest amount of damage can really hurt you from getting out there to the front. It's almost like there's a parachute on the car, and it really holds you up from being able to block the runs that will be happening behind you.
And I'll tell you what, that is exactly the way it is. Once you get that little bit of damage, you might not think about it. When you're in a giant pack, you're drafting, your car seems to be okay. But once everybody starts getting down to double file, even single file, these cars are approaching the 200-mile-an-hour mark down the end of the straightaways, back and front. Obviously, the back being longer than the front because of the dog leg, but you'll lose 2 or 3 miles per hour. 2 or 3 miles per hour may not sound like a lot, but when these guys are going single file, they will blow you away.
Absolutely. Well, it'll be interesting to see here as well early on which line works best. Joe DeSpirito last week was on the pole. I believe Seminara was to the outside of the front row in that race. And we saw at the early portions that Joe DeSpirito, by the time they got back around to complete the first lap, he had fallen back to the 5th position. So we'll see if we can get that inside line going here this evening. A couple of names that are not in the field here tonight, most notably the points that are coming to this one, Grant Wesley. He's obviously in real life down there enjoying the Bristol weekend, the NASCAR weekend there. So he will lose the points lead here tonight. And I was talking with league admin Josh Metallic with the fact that Grant's not in the field here tonight and Dante's starting at the back. We may have a different winner here this season. Zach, it's your first time in the booth, but I'm going to turn the mic over to you. Let you bring us to green.
All right, they're coming out of the triover. The pace car is in. They will get the green flag. They're off and running, heading down to turn number 1. 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, all the way back to about 25th position, working their ways through the corner. It looks like I don't see anybody with any real clear advantage at this point, but they're still getting up to speed going on to the back straightaway there, Seth.
about a car length gap from the 24 back to the 17. They've got to close that up quick if that inside line is going to have a chance of getting this straightaway speed. And there you can see, because they weren't lined up nose to tail, Seminara, Bernie Mobbs, Bob Dixon making that middle line work into 3.
You're going to see the 712. He's going to get out to a little bit of a lead, but I'll tell you what, he's got almost a car length between him and the 90 car on that top line. That could sneak up to bite him. It might not seem like a whole lot, but with the bumps and the runs and the momentum these cars get down the straightaways, gapping yourself just a little too much could prove extremely detrimental.
Bob Seminara, like last week, going to lead the first lap, even though he started on the outside of the front row. Right now, though, you've got that inside line finally lined up with Joe DeSpirito, Chuck McClure, Jessica Shelton, Josh Metallic as well. They make up the ground in the corner, but on the straightaway, that's where that outside line is so strong.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Seth, sometimes it might not be so much of an issue right at this moment, but as the laps wear on, you've really got to fight to keep that car right down on the bottom of the racetrack, and you may not realize it, but you'll actually scrub off more speed running on that very bottom than what you will in that middle to high line. So I think just like we're seeing, you've got a good line of cars in that second groove, and they're just not quite losing the same momentum that the cars on the bottom are, but there's only, 7 cars down there as opposed to the whole rest of the field on the high side as they work their way out of turn 2 toward the backstretch.
And one thing we've also seen here, not only this season, but last season as well, when you start to accumulate the drivers up in that middle groove, even then, that little bit of a checkup happens, and then when we're going to start to see that third lane possibly form, the question is, when do these drivers decide to do it? Mention the fact the first race went completely caution-free from green flag to checkered flag, but we did have a number of yellows last week. That might have these drivers maybe putting this race in perspective of maybe we don't want to be too aggressive early on.
No, and you know what? That's just the thing, Seth. With this racetrack, Talladega can be a very, very temperamental sort of racetrack. You can have the same exact drivers, the same exact cars line up in the same exact order, 2 or 3 different races. You can have one go caution-free, one have a ton of cautions, and another there's only a couple here and there. But it looks like right now, early on, everybody playing pretty nice with each other.
Why, whenever schedules go to Daytona or Talladega, it's always considered a wild card race. They're at Talladega every single week here for this series, whether it be a regular season or even one of the 5 playoff races. And you see the top 5 on that middle line have cleared. Battle is now for 6th side by side between Richard Martin and Joe DeSpirito. Richard Martin trying to come back from a rather poor finish last week when he was caught up in a wreck coming to the caution flag that ended up ending the race as he took a wild barrel roll ride into the infield grass.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. With the speed that these cars are carrying, it is not an abnormal sort of thing to see really hard crashes. Cars get upside down as we see Donnie Garrett now work to the inside of the 143 down the back straightaway. It looks like he's going to get a little bit of a momentum, and looks like he might be peeking underneath that 90 car too.
This might be the way you have to do it as well. Step out of line, have someone to pick you up, and kind of stifle that outside line with the fact that Billy Elliser was about a car length behind Bob Dixon, so they were not really lined up tight in that outside line for a brief moment. But now you're seeing as they've gotten themselves back nose to tail. Donnie Garrett, Bob Dixon, or make that rather Richard Martin, and a lot of others. They need more friends on that inside line.
Yeah, and I think what you're going to see is these guys get a lot more racy. You already see that they're starting to be about 3 wide mid-pack there. And as these guys form up this third line, that's going to take away some of those cars from that second line. Some guys are going to get opportunistic and take a dive down low, while you might see others take a look up high, see if they can get a little bit of a push from behind.
That was in the middle there of that through-ride situation was Carson Krentz in the 0-3. He's got Mike Rogers behind him. They have now been able to get themselves double file with the 9 of Chris Elliott. They're still 3 wide further back, though, as you got Glenn Harris, Manny D, Wayne Pribnow trying to make that work. And then you got another couple of drivers back there, maybe just kind of riding for the moment. This, like I said, it's kind of a moniker of Dante Ricky in these races to start towards the back. And he and Sonny Tallman, the 2 Subway Toyota Camrys, always seem to have this early strategy of ride to the back, basically wait until that first round of green flag pit stops before making their charge to the front.
Yeah, Seth, that's Actually, not very surprising to me at all. I think that's a fairly common thing. Some guys choose to, be a little bit more relaxed. They'll fall back and just cruise. And you can pretty safely cruise as long as there's no incidents ahead of you on the racetrack or entering, exiting pits, anything like that. Until about the midway of the race before you decide, I think I'll turn it on and try to make a run at it up front now. As you see, the 77 getting a little bit more of a run might be challenging for the lead here.
Donnie Garrett with a big push there from Richard Martin, and you're right, he's going to at least get alongside of Bob Seminara coming to the start-finish line, and that's another thing about Talladega that makes it such a wild card racetrack. It's not like Daytona where that start-finish line is right in the middle of the tri-oval. You got another couple hundred feet before you get down to the start-finish line between the center of the tri-oval and the entrance to turn one.
Absolutely, and I think now we're going to see that middle to high lane losing quite a bit of
Caution is out. First caution. And we've got a big wreck over in turns 1 and 2.
Oh man, 10 car upside down.
Harry Bombard. You've also got Carson Krentz. I think I saw Mike Rogers involved. Wayne Pribnow also. A number of these drivers that I'm seeing involved. Glenn Harris were drivers that were running that third outside line. Something says to me that they probably had a car slide right up in front of them with nowhere to go. And it might have actually been that 10 car of Terry Bombard you were just talking about.
Yeah, I think that's back around the area where they were 3 wide. It could have been anything, man. They could have made some side contact. Might have been a bump draft gone wrong. I guess we'll see once we get a replay all set and ready to go here.
Well, the timing of that caution came out very opportune for Donnie Garrett because he had just taken the race lead away from Bob Seminara. So therefore, he is the race leader and undoubtedly will be leading them all down pit road. I'd be surprised if we really see anybody stay out at this point, especially with the fact that they would only have been about 7-8 laps away from coming down to pit road under green flag conditions.
Yeah, I think you're definitely going to see some guys come down and get fuel. What tires look like, I can't really say. But if they're going to go ahead and load it up with fuel anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if they slapped them on there, get those Dr. Feel Goods, and get back out there and running again.
Take a look and see what happened to bring out the caution. And I believe, looking at this, it actually started with a car that was running in the middle line. That's the 03 of Carson Krentz. Have to see if there was a bump from behind by Mike Rogers, and there very well might have been.
Yeah, it looks like the 710, the 10 was upside down. You see the 11 flipping through the 57. That's a shame to see, man. That's a good handful of cars right on lap 8 or 9 of the race here. It's unfortunate, but the guys up front are looking at an opportunity to start setting up some strategy now.
Drivers we named when that caution came out, all involved. Add 2 more names to that list, the 57 of Stefan Martel, as well as our season opener winner, the 84 of Dante Ricky, did get a piece of the incident. So about 7 cars involved in this first caution of the day, and that wreck happened up there in mid-pack around a battle for the 15th position.
Yeah, and I'm watching cars coming into the pits right now. It looks like that 103 is pretty used up. It looked like the 00 car had some pretty significant damage on his right side as well. You really hate to see it. I'm sure these guys will get back out there because these are season-long regulars. There's a lot of these guys that are super loyal to this series, and they'll get out there just so they can try to make up some points. It's just a shame to see, man. You hate to wreck them up this early.
Absolutely. Going to be a long race for these drivers. But to your point, the fact this is a regular season race, there is a potential playoff spot on the line. And who knows, if we end up having a couple more yellows and a couple more drivers maybe have to retire from the race, every position is a point. And at the end of the regular season, who knows? You may make it into the playoffs by 1-2 points. You could trace it all the way back to the decision to stay out and try and salvage points in this race.
Yeah, every little point makes a huge difference. With the wild card type tracks that these are, like you talked at the opening of the broadcast, you never know. Even if you got to get out there and drone on for the last 50 or so laps, the positions that you gain from doing that or prevent yourself from losing is another way of looking at it, could mean a lot. It could mean the difference in battling for the championship or having to settle on a lower place finish in the standings at the end of the season.
Cy Jones and that Sunoco Chevrolet staying out. He's obviously getting the bonus point for a lap led. Very important bonus point as well if you consider Cy Jones in the first 2 races finds himself 15th in points, just outside the window of being able to point his way into the playoff grid. And as he will come to pit road, that will turn the race lead over to Joe DeSpirito. Obviously, there are going to be quite a number of drivers that are going to be running off the pace. I saw a lot of drivers take some hard hits to the front end of their race cars. You mentioned about the 10 of Terry Bombard upside down, so he's going to have not only front end damage, but roof damage. That kills you at the super speedways. But only one driver officially retired out of the race from that incident, and that is Mike Rogers. Mike came into this race currently in, I believe, the 27th position in points. So it has not been a great start to the season for that driver, and he'll definitely look to be bouncing back in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, you really hate to see that for Mike. He finished 15th place last race. Not a bad showing. 15th's about a mid-pack showing for this series. You get a lot of high car counts in these tally challenge races. A lot of guys are super loyal to it. Like I said earlier, it's been ongoing a long time. It's one of the staples, I guess, that you could call it for RTG. This is just one of those series that when you think about series that run on a regular basis and the guys that you're going to be running around, tally challenge is definitely one that comes to mind.
Absolutely. Looks like Carson Krentz has been hit with the EOL for bringing out that caution, so he will be starting back in the 25th position. Terry Bombard has returned back to the racetrack, I do believe, in the 10 machine, but because of the fact that he was upside down, he had to call a tow. Therefore, he has lost a lap. If a caution were to come out, though, he'd be able to get back in the lead lap, as RTG Talladega Challenge has 2 lucky dogs instead of the usual 1. And we mentioned Mike Rogers is currently out of the race. Joe DeSpirito going to be leading us back to green, and that lap that he just led there under caution, that was the first lap he's led here today, because as we saw, he lost the race lead to Bob Seminara after being the pole sitter back at the initial start of this race.
You're right, Seth, and that's kind of interesting. I think when they come back by the line this time, they'll probably be getting one to go. So I'm kind of curious to see, after the way that the start of the race played out and he fell back a little bit, will he stay in that low line or will he opt for that high line restart? I'm not exactly sure who Joe usually works with on a regular basis at these racetracks, but who's the better pusher? Is it Donnie? Is it the 712? Where would he rather be to try to get off to a good run on this second green flag?
I think that maybe just based on the fact he's going to get to control when they accelerate here, I think he's going to stay on that inside line, because you asked about who he works with. Well, he's part of what's known as the Florida Boys contingency, which include Bob Seminara and Bernie Mobbs, who are lining up second and third on that inside line. So I think you're going to see all 3 of those drivers try to work together here on this restart. And it is possible, if you get them lined up on that inside line, at least for the first lap, maybe lap and a half, to be able to have the inside line get an advantage. Then that outside line kicks in. The trouble for Joe DeSpirito, rather, in the last 2 weeks, he's just not been able to get the second place car on the inside line to push him on the initial starts of these races.
Yeah, so we'll see whether or not his teammates will play it a little bit more aggressively on this restart or if they'll try to lag back. I have seen a couple occurrences where if you get that second car right up on that rear bumper of that first car, and those 2 guys can time it right, those 2 cars can take off like a rocket ship, and it can be extremely beneficial. But as we were also talking about earlier, you don't want to get out to too much of a lead. You get those 2 cars out front, a whole line of cars lined up behind you, and they will get past you. Definitely worth noting. Never forget, at a super speedway, the more engines that you have, the faster that you're going to be.
Absolutely. Joe DeSpirito will be leading us back to green as the lights are out atop the pace car, with Richard Martin to the outside. Bob Seminara and Donnie Garrett third and fourth. Bernie Mobbs completes the top 5. That's going to be Chuck McClure in 6th. Bob Dixon in 7th. 8th place is going to be Jessica Shelton. Then completing the top 10 is going to be Josh Metallic and Billy Elliser. Also, with the timing of this caution coming out, these drivers now would be able to make it the rest of the way on 2 more pit stops, as the fuel window about 17 to 19 laps, as we've seen during the course of this season. So the question is, will they be making those pit stops under green or under caution? Usually, Zach, when we end up having an early yellow flag, everybody just kind of takes a deep breath. The adrenaline is kind of waned off just a little bit from coming to the initial green. We may end up seeing these drivers not be quite as aggressive as they were in the first 10 laps.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see him super aggressive either. It is still really, really early in this race. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows they got a long way to run. Unless you're in the back of the pack and you're dead set on getting right to the front, I think everybody's pretty comfortable. Green flag is out. What do you think, Seth? Is it going to be that bottom line or that top line as they go into turn one?
Well, the fact that there's only 3 cars in that outside line, I think the inside line's got the advantage for the moment. We'll have to see if that 77 of Donnie Garrett can stay tucked up underneath the 43 of Richard Martin. And look at this. DeSpirito's actually going to move up there and pull that outside line.
Despirito pulls to the outside. It looks like he's looking for that push from the 43, that 77, the third car in that top line. He's right on the back bumper of Martin. As Martin now looks to the low side of Despirito, going through 3 and 4. Samanera now going to tuck up to the back side of the 43. It looks like Despirito might just be in a little bit of trouble here on the outside.
Well, all of a sudden, everybody's gone to that middle groove, though. Richard Martin, Bob Seminara, Bernie Mobb say, where'd all our friends go? They've all migrated to the second lane. Jessica Shelton's going to jump down there with him, as DeSpirito will lead them back to the line. Joe DeSpirito, we mentioned 3 for 3 this season and starting on the point, but he's been unable to put that 24 in victory lane, the defending champion of the series.
Yeah, and I think right now he's exactly where he wants to be. If you pay close attention, the 24, the 77, and the 17 are all hooked up. All 3 of those cars are bumper to bumper to bumper. They are making maximum horsepower and maximum speed as they work their way down into turn number 3. That top side with the obvious advantage. Looks like Josh Metallic is going to work up to the backside of Chuck McClure as well.
The 28 back there of Mark Paglia. Now, Paglia has not exactly had the best of runs here this season. He ended up finishing way down the finishing results in the season opener, and I believe he was hit with an EOL penalty in the closing stages of last week's race after he pushed Grant Wesley to the victory, coming to the caution flag. Saw him riding at the back early on in this one, now starting to make a charge to the front. You talked about it earlier, about the fact that it's all about being able to formulate a strategy, and it's never the same. How do you choose when is the time to move to the front as opposed to kind of just riding there and waiting for your moment?
Well, I can tell you without a doubt, as a driver, you always want to be moving to the front. It doesn't matter what point of the race it is. You're a driver, you're competitive, you want to be at the front of the pack. That being said, you also have to weigh your risk versus reward, especially on these sort of super speedways and things like that. If you see the guys up front of you are super, super racy and it's really early, you might want to hang back. But everything, if it's otherwise pretty quiet and you think that you can get your car up there and you think that it's fast enough to do it, now is the perfect time in the race to test exactly what your car is going to do if you need to make moves later on.
Obviously, we mentioned the fact 10 drivers will be advancing into the playoffs, and I don't think race 3 is really that early to start looking at some of the drivers that are trying to, lock themselves into those playoff positions. You see Chuck McClure running to the outside there. There's another driver that really would love to solidify a playoff spot here today. 3rd in the overall standings, has had a tremendous start to the season.
Oh, man, and look at that. Donnie Garrett's going to get stuck in the middle. It doesn't look like he's going to have any friends. I think he's going to be falling towards the back there, Seth. So it looks like Joe and Chuck pretty dead even across the line. I think the 17 got the lap led on that one, but that's just how quick it happens, Seth. Man, it's really tricky. Sometimes you think that you are in a great spot, and then the next thing you know, you're stuck in the middle of the racetrack with nobody to help you in front of or behind you. And you can see Donnie Garrett's only looks like 7 or 8 positions from the tail end of the line altogether now.
Yeah, I had the privilege of racing with these guys a couple of races last season. In the second race, I was stuck in that middle line, not once, but twice. It is a lonely feeling when you're going from the front to the back with cars on either side of you, as that battle for the lead's back on. McClure had it, but DeSpirito's got friends on the inside line. They're door-to-door coming to the line again.
Man, that 39 car, I'll tell you what, he is really pushing on the bumper of the McClure number 17. It looks like Martin's going to back up to the front bumper of Seminara and maybe get a little bit more of a run. If he can maintain this momentum through the corner, he might be able to give DeSpirito a good shot coming out of turn 2.
Josh Metallic in that Oscar Mayer Ford, 17th in points coming into this one, a former playoff contender from last season and a former winner from last season. And I mentioned I talked with him pre-race, and he said this is a race that he really wants to try and win.
Yeah, I think again, as a driver, you want to race and you really want to win all of them. You're a driver. That's what you do. It's in your competitive nature. But, kind of like you were talking about a couple moments ago, Seth, race 3, not always necessarily the worst time to start thinking about points. I think you've got a handful of guys that run this series that are really, really competitive, really fast. And you see them up front on a consistent basis. But then again, when you add in the wild card factor of it being a super speedway, the draft coming into play, you never know when the fast guys might get taken out in a wreck. You want to try to put yourself in a position to be as consistent as possible. Just like Billy was saying earlier when you interviewed him, you just want to get every single point that you can. Looks like that top line's got more cars once again, Seth.
You got Chris Elliott there now, third in line. Billy Elliser in fourth on that outside line. And Dave Melson, the 13, another driver that's been really good at the start of the season, fifth in the point standings. And just kind of bridging off what you were talking about, it's a 10-race regular season. With it being Talladega, there's every possibility 10 different drivers could go to victory lane. So there's no guarantee that any driver is going to be able to point their way in.
Yeah, exactly. Those wins are crucial. Every little point you're fighting for on the racetrack. Maybe not so much now, but right now is definitely the time where you're starting to go, okay, where do I need to be? What are the cars that I need to worry about? What are the cars that I think that I can work with? What do I need to do to put myself in the best situation to give myself the best possible chances to pull out the best points finish and the best overall finish that I can for the end of the race and ultimately for the end of the season?
Joe DeSpirito continuing to try and get that inside line going. He got alongside Metallic for second, now back alongside of Chuck McClure for the race lead once again. You can see we're double file all the way back through this lead pack, but we got to check and see of the drivers that continued on but were involved in up to this point our only caution of the day. You've got drivers that have lost the draft. Terry Bombard and Wayne Pribnow back here in 24th and 25th. Carson Krentz, who triggered the wreck over in turn 1. He's in the 23rd position, just behind Cy Jones in the 22nd spot. I don't think the 7 car was involved in the wreck. Remember, he stayed out that extra lap to be able to lead it. Might have been the misfortune of starting at the tail end of the field. Might not have gotten up through the gears quickly enough and just lost the draft due to the fact that he wasn't up to speed with everybody else.
Yeah, and it happens so fast when you go in, make a pit stop, and then you're behind, 6 or 7 cars that might be damaged, not quite up to this pace that the rest of the field is. As we see up front again, they're side by side, just like it's the start of the race all over. But when you get in a position where you've got a fast car, it's not damaged, but you've got 6 or 7 that are damaged ahead of you, it provides the opportunity for those cars up front undamaged to gap you. And if they get enough of a gap on you and you've got a little bit of a draft but nobody behind you to help, it just happens so fast, Seth. You can just lose touch with this draft, and once you lose touch with the draft, there's nothing that you can do about it. You just got to hope that a caution comes out or that they'll catch back up to you again pretty quick.
These drivers just around 10 laps away from making what might be the first round of green flag pit stops here today. I was actually scanning through the field there for a brief moment because I think we do have another driver out of the race, though it does not show up officially on the grid. And that's the 57 of Stefan Martel, who was involved in that wreck as well. Currently shows him 6 laps down and didn't see him sitting on pit road, so it looks like he may not be on track anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that 57 might have loaded it up onto the hauler. It looks like it might be working its way through the tunnel on the back side of the track there, Seth. Tough break for Stefan Martel.
Stefan coming into this race 28th in points. I mean, a lot of drivers that were involved in that wreck were drivers that really have had 2 very poor performances here to start out the season and really needed to turn their luck around. Martel, Krentz, Rogers, Terry Bombard, these are all guys that came into this race outside the top 25 in points.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's just kind of the nature of super speedway racing, Seth. You can do everything right, have one of the fastest cars in the field, but something in front of you happens that is completely out of your control, and next thing you know, you're on the hauler and you're headed home. That's just the way super speedway racing goes sometimes.
Speaking of Terry Bombard, when we saw the field coming into the tri-oval, you saw the car headed to pit road. That was the 10, and he has made the left-hand turn to the garage area. So Terry, who did not start the season in race 1, had a tough race last week and another tough race here this week. And Terry Bombard was another driver who last season was in the hunt for the championship, a driver that made the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a really, really tough break for Bumby. You hate to see it. He's another one of those guys that he's a staple of this series. He's here, he's loyal, he's here every week. One of most friendly competitors that's out there. As it looks like, I don't know, is there a challenge for the lead going on there? It looks like McClure down on the low side.
Yeah, he jumped down to the inside line. I'm not sure what made him decide to do that, but there goes Metallic to the front. Chris Elliott going to push in there with Dave Melson. It almost looked like McClure went down there of his own free will. I'm not sure if he was trying to get back here, maybe to save a little bit of fuel, because remember, he's been leading most of this long green flag run, and these drivers are closing in on green flag pit stops.
Yep, you're right, Seth. The other thing I'm interested in seeing if happen is, remember earlier that 39 and that 17 working so well together. Do you think maybe they'll think about swapping it around, see how Chuck does on the push-in now?
Could very well. I mean, in terms of super speedway racing, your friends are where you find them, and a lot of these drivers, they're friends with each other. There are going to be alliances that are made, and that could very well be the case. Could possibly be the fact as well. Josh Metallic hasn't led a lap here today, so Chuck McClure says, hey, I've already been out here for 8 circuits. Why don't you get out there and get yourself a bonus point?
Yeah, that could very well be too. It looks like that top line might be getting a little antsy. I don't know if it's maybe because there's pit stops closing in, but I saw Chris Elliott take a look to the outside of the 39 as they were coming to the end of the backstretch. Makes me wonder if he's thinking about making that move, try to get it around, try to get up to the point before everybody comes in for green flag pit stops.
Well, it's so tough because I can tell you from experience, when you're running the draft of the car in front of you, you get a tremendous toe and a tremendous run that you feel like you can make that move on the car in front of you. But then when you step out of line, it's like hitting a parachute. It just stifles all your momentum. So I think Chris Elliott might be testing the waters out there, but a little nervous to try and make a move on that 39 for fear he'd get hung out by himself.
Yeah, and that is another thing. We saw it happen with the 77 car earlier. He got stuck in the middle of the pack, fell all the way back. Looks like we got the 6 car making a move down to the inside. Willie Coate down to the inside of the 13. Is he going to try to get up to the number 9 car? But it looks like he might be stalled out there too. Chuck McClure going to hook up to his rear end.
First time we've mentioned Wiley Coate here this evening, up inside of the top 5. And you talked just moments ago about Donnie Garrett getting stuck in the middle, very slowly, patiently, and methodically working his way back up to the front, now up to 4th place. This is a guy who had drifted all the way back, almost outside of the top 10 about 10 laps ago.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Donnie is really, really good on these super speedways. He knows how to run them. He understands how the draft works, and he understands exactly what it means to hook up with another car and use the momentum from your car and the others. He takes a look down to the inside of the 13. He's going to get down in front of Wiley. Can he make the run on the 13 car? Because I feel like we see him get about the 3rd car back on that low line, and that's where all of them seem to just kind of stall out. It's hard to maintain momentum from there.
Well, here's the thing we're going to have to try and figure out is these drivers that are moving down to the inside, are they moving down to the inside to try and make forward progress, or are they going down to the preferred line to be able to have the cleaner venue to get to pit road entrance?
Oh man, the 13 and the 17 almost touched there going on to turn 1. Both cars kept it straight. As you see Chris Elliott now making the move for the lead. Garrett's going to tuck up to the bottom of him as they come out of turn 2.
Quite a power move there by that number 9 Dodge, as he was able to leave Josh Metallic on the top side, pick up Donnie Garrett, as you said, for a drafting partner. And pretty much for the first time in a long time, we actually saw that inside line work in a pass for the lead.
Yep, and it's like I mentioned to you earlier, Seth. You saw as they came to the end of that back straightaway, Donnie Garrett was right on the back bumper of that 9 car.
Here we go. Chris Elliott coming to pit road. Quite a number of the Dodges actually on pit road here, as Wiley Coate, Bob Dixon in as well, Manny D, and I believe that is the 17 of Chuck McClure that came in with them.
Yep, working their way painfully slow down pit road. They haven't even gotten to their stalls yet. They're going to start ducking down. So it makes me wonder, Seth, like I asked you earlier, you think they'll take tires, gas? If it was me, I would probably take all 4 and get that fuel tank as full as I possibly could.
I've talked to so many drivers about their strategies here at Talladega. Some of them say 4, some of them say 2. The reason being you don't want to end up having a pit road problem and lose time that way. You're safer taking 2 in the span of time that it takes to fill that tank full of the 2 cans of Sunoco fuel.
And that's exactly what the number 9 car did, Seth. He took 2 left side tires. He's got a sizable lead over the number 17. How many more cars we got coming in now?
I'm not sure I can count that high here.
All of them.
Yeah, there's about maybe 15 to 20 cars all on pit road, and somehow, some way, they all made it on safely. That's one of the things about this league as well. A massive number of cars come to pit road, and nobody runs each other over. That is so difficult to orchestrate at a track like Talladega.
Absolutely, it is. It looks like Josh Metallic only going to take 2 tires. Donnie Garrett overshoots his pit stall. He's going to have to back it up. That's going to be costly. It looks like he's taking right sides too. It makes me wonder. That could be a huge time loss if he takes left sides as well, but it looks like just right sides. 39's down and away, as is the 77.
Dave Melson's going to inherit the lead because of this, and I think he's going to pit road this time, but nobody came to pit road with him. With the exception of the 710 of Manny D, who I think is coming down to serve a penalty. That's another big thing, too. You know, we talk about the treacherousness of the high banks of Talladega, but pit road plays just as much of a factor into the outcome of races. When we had that caution-free race back in week 1, there were about 7 drivers that got hit with speeding penalties in that thing. So these drivers have to be very careful, not only on the racetrack itself, but also on that 55-mile-per-hour pit lane.
Absolutely. It is so hard to get woed up when you're going 185, 190 miles an hour out of turn 4. You're trying to downshift, you're trying to brake, the rear end's trying to break loose on you, and it's so easy to overshoot. Looks like Chris Elliott's going to make his way past Josh Metallic on the high side. Chuck McClure, I'll tell you what, I watched Chuck push that number 9 car all the way down the front straightaway. They rocketed by all those cars coming out of the pits and had them by the time they were out of turn 4.
That was just a 2-car tandem really as well, able to make up all of that ground, as now they're starting to fan out just a little bit going around Dave Melson, and these drivers now have the 2 cans of Sunoco fuel to see them till the next round of green flag pit stops. They can't make it from here without coming to pit road at least one more time. We may see now, with the fact that they're a little bit more spread out and the runs are going to be even more frequent, we may see a little bit more aggressive racing out of these drivers, as there we go, 3 wide.
Yep, 3
wide. Going to be the 3rd position.
Man, Elliott was so close. That was so tight. Can he squeeze down? Yep, he's going to be able to squeeze down in there. Looks like we got Chuck back out to the lead. Martin right on his back bumper. But this is like what I talked about earlier, Seth. As a racer, you're content to just ride. But when you see that opportunity to pick up as many positions as you can, you're going to do it. And Chuck McClure knows that he's got a fast car. He wants it to be out front. Wiley working back down to the bottom with the 77 on his back bumper out of turn 2.
Metallic going to lead the side-by-side battling behind him. Just to update some of the things that happened on pit road there. The 710 of Manny D did indeed get hit with a speeding penalty. Had to come back down pit road to serve that. Saw some smoke there on pit road as Wayne Pribnow, his engine went south. He's going to be out of the race with an engine valve problem. Of course, he had that earlier damage from our only caution so far this evening.
Yep, it looks like everybody's just tucking in line. Nobody trying to get too aggressive now. They've got a good lead on the rest of the field. This field has probably whittled its way down to about half of what it was at the start of this race. You got the first caution, the big crash that took a bunch of cars out, took a lot of guys right out of contention just because they can't get up to pace. And now green flag pit stops, which spreads the field out even a little bit more. I think what we're going to see here, Seth, is a little bit of a lull. I don't think that they're going to get too aggressive yet at this point, but I think it's coming. It is coming.
Yeah, I mean, you've obviously got that one more pit stop you're going to have to make, and we would consider that the money stop. That's basically the make it or break it pit stop for these drivers. Plus the fact as well, we mentioned this week after week here with the Talladega Challenge, with the in-game cautions, these drivers really don't have to start pushing until we get around 4 laps to go, because there is every possibility that this race could end under yellow, much like it did last week.
Yes, that is always a possibility, but it's never something that you want to see. As a driver, you always want to see it finish under green. So when you're making those calculations in your head, you're going, okay, exactly how much, like, me personally, now that we're on the next to last run, I was probably starting to pay attention to how much fuel am I using, how much am I saving. That way you can start to think ahead to that second to last and last run. Will you have enough to make it the rest of the way? Donnie Garrett back to the point.
Garrett with Seminara now to second. Bernie Mobbs trying to move into the third position. About half a car length clear on that inside line as Metallic tries to get the outside line reformed and get another run here to the outside of the 712. You saw a couple of drivers get put a lap down there after the field got so spread out during the green flag pit stops. I believe Cy Jones, Benoit Plord, they have now fallen a lap down, so they would be right now in the two lucky dog positions. And you also talked about the fact that there were fewer cars up here in the lead pack than we had before. I think there were 13 cars up in the lead pack moments ago, but a couple of drivers, including the 711 of John Godfrey, the 55 of Sonny Tallman, and the 84 of Dante Ricky were able to draft up there as well. So we right now have 16 cars up in this lead group.
Yep, and we are side by side working our way back off of turn 4 again. Josh Metallic with the help of that 17 car. Remember, Seth, we just talked about this a couple minutes ago. Those two working so well together. They're going to make it around. It looks like Josh is going to clear Donnie to the start-finish line. Chuck looks to have about a half a car length on Donnie as well, so that top line coming in again.
And they're about to catch some traffic here. Glenn Harris and Carson Krentz. That will maybe help give this second lane a little bit of a tow down the back straightaway as well, as Metallic and McClure will clear for first and second place, trying to bring Richard Martin along with them as well. I mean, for Josh Metallic, he comes into this race in a little bit more of a hairier point situation than Chuck McClure, with Metallic being 17th, McClure being 3rd. I think this is a rhetorical question, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you think Chuck McClure, since he's sitting pretty well points-wise, would be willing to push the 39 to victory lane?
I think I think that's a hard question to answer at this point. We're just past halfway in this race. I think what Chuck is going to do, he's going to know exactly what he's going to do with about 10 laps to go. It's going to depend on how big is the pack that they're racing in. Are they all single file? Are they all doubled up? Right now, I think he could make that move and it wouldn't be too detrimental. But if you get toward the end of the run, if we were to go green flag the rest of the way, we lose a few more cars to the next round of green flag stops out of the lead draft. Man, I don't know. That's a tough question to ask. You always want to win, but you don't want to lose too much either.
But we had a couple near moments there from turn 2 down the back straightaway. I believe that Bernie Mobbs and Mark Paglia almost made a little bit of contact, and then Donnie Garrett and Paglia almost made a little bit of contact. So these guys are running each other a little bit out of room right now, and as the laps tick away, that's when you start to see the aggressiveness just amp up just a teeny little bit more.
Yep, and you see that high line, the 39, the 17, and the 28, bumper to bumper to bumper again. That is by, oh man, I thought the 43 was going to lose it there in the middle of 1 and 2. But when you get those cars bumper to bumper to bumper, that momentum that you get, it cannot be beaten, especially toward the middle lane. You can get a good run down on the low side, but you got to be really careful that the car is not going to drift up on you as you enter turn 1 or turn 3.
And a big reason why that could be happening for drivers like the 43 of Richard Martin, you mentioned a couple of drivers, or quite a number of drivers, taking the two-tire strategy on that round of green flag pit stops, so not quite the grip that they had at the start of this race. Might not be that the car is turning quite as well in the center of the corner as they're used to.
No, at the beginning of a run, it's all right. It's pretty predictable, pretty dependable. But as these runs wear on, you get halfway, about, close to the end of your fuel run. It's a super speedway. You don't lose that much rubber, but at the same time, it gets harder and harder and harder to stick that car on the bottom, both in turn 1, turn 3, and the other one that people don't always think about that often, coming off of turn 4.
It's incredible if we look at the points. You've got 8th in the point standings, Bob Seminara. You've got Richard Martin 14th in points. If you look at the drivers just in between them, Dixon, Garrett, Shelton, Mobbs, Elliser, they're all up here in this lead pack. So we're seeing right now a lot of drivers battling with each other, maybe not realizing it at this point, but could potentially be battling each other for future playoff positions.
Yep, and we kind of touched on that earlier too. You'll find yourself, you pay attention to the guys that you're around in the standings. Who do I need to beat? How many positions do I need to get? How many points do I need to pick up to get just, that little bit of an edge that will get me ahead of that guy that's in front of me? And it looks like now we have the 26 car. He's going to take a shot at leading that bottom line. We'll see if they can make any progress as they work their way down the back straightaway.
Driver we talked to pre-race, Billy Elliser, coming into this race 13th in the standings. He had Richard Martin with him, but then everybody went up to that second groove again, and it's just a helpless feeling for a driver. You get such a tremendous run, you try and take it somewhere, you look behind you, and you don't have enough people to help push you forward.
Yeah, it really is heartbreaking. But again, call back to what we spoke about just a moment ago with tires. As you lose that little bit of grip, that second to mid line is definitely the more comfortable line to be in. You can more reliably push guys in front of you. You don't have to worry about your front end shooting up the racetrack or have to worry about keeping the rear end under you. That's just kind of the way it is. And they're at that point as we get closer to the next round of green flag stops. It's amazing to me, Seth. This race is going by so fast.
It really is. When they keep it green, these laps tick away very quickly. And I'm being told that we're going to be seeing that final green flag pit stop. If we get to that point, it'll be taking place very shortly. Somewhere between laps 49 to 52 will be the final pit stop of the day for these drivers.
Yep. And again, that top three nose to tail, you see that middle line is starting to gap that bottom line. There's only 3 or 4 cars down there now at all the way through the tri-oval. They are carrying so much speed right now, Seth. What we talked about earlier tonight, if you get just a little bit of damage, this is what you do not want to see. Even if you have the most minuscule amount of damage on your race car, this is breaking your heart right now if you look ahead and see that.
Absolutely. If they're single file, there is no possible way you can stay up with them. If they're racing double wide, 3 wide ahead of you, you have a shot. And most oftentimes, too, you have to have someone behind pushing you to stay up in the draft. But I'm noticing a couple of names that we didn't talk about early portions of this race up inside of the top 10. John Godfrey in the 7-Eleven is now up to 6th. Sonny Tallman and Dante Ricky, the Subway Toyotas, they're now up here in 7th and 8th.
Yep, and just because we haven't talked about them all race long doesn't mean that they aren't going to be a factor later on. So we got about 23 more laps to go in this race. You're going to see some guys starting to get a little antsy, starting to want to make some moves toward the front. That 1739 tandem is making so much speed running nose to tail right now. And the 28, do you see that? Do you see that, Seth? The 28 is tucked right up on the back end of that 17, which is tucked right on the back end of the 39. They are flying around the track.
And you can see how that translated into the little bit of a gap between the 28 and the 13. Minuscule half car length gap, but that's just because of how tight that draft was. This is an interesting scenario between Metallic and McClure because McClure came to pit road a lap earlier than Metallic did. Would he maybe be able to save about a lap of fuel to ensure that he and Metallic come to pit road at the same time, leave at the same time, and keep this little alliance they've had going on?
You know, with the amount of time that we've seen that 39 out in front, I wouldn't be surprised if at this point he's burnt off enough fuel that these guys are probably going to be working back onto the same pit strategy. Seth, at the end of the back straightaway, I'm looking at 199 miles an hour into turn 3. These guys are motoring.
Now, we saw about, 15, 20 cars all come to pit road together there on the second lap of that first round of green flag pit stops. We're probably going to see maybe the same amount of cars on pit road here again, but we call this the money stop. You not only gain time on pit road on how long your pit stop takes, but on how you aggressively approach the entrance to pit road. So we may not see these drivers be quite as cordial when we get to this final round of green flag pit stops here.
No, I think you are exactly right. I think this last round of pit stop is going to come down exactly that. Pit road entry. You don't want to scrub off too much speed, but at the same time, you don't want to put yourself in a bind. You don't want to wheel hop. You don't want to lock it up. You don't want to spin the car and create a big melee coming out of the pits because that could mark the end of your day as well. So we'll see what's going to happen. It's coming quick.
Right now, 16 cars in the lead lap, all up in this lead draft. You've got a couple of lap machines intermingled as well. Glenn Harris, Cy Jones, Perry Bond, they're all battling for lucky dog positions here. Should we get a caution flag to come out? And now we see Metallic move down to that inside line. He was running the middle groove before. Everyone moves down to that dotted yellow line, which says to me, these drivers very close to coming to pit road.
You know, I'm actually kind of surprised to see that, Seth, because as I'm watching the telemetry while this race is going on, they look to be going a good 3 or 4 miles an hour slower running that bottom line. And when you're going 3 or 4 miles an hour slower running the bottom line, that's going to give all those guys that are behind you that have fallen to the back, they're doubling up right now. They are getting ready to make that run toward the front. Single file, middle of the racetrack, a ton of speed. That's where everybody's going to get singled up. But down to the bottom, when you got the lead car that's going just a little bit slower than they were before, it looks like that high groove is making its way toward the front as we see Seminara working toward third and fourth.
Yes, Seminara, Despirito, Shelton, Tallman, all up there. Now making that second groove work, seeing the top three move down to the inside line. But again, whoa, we got the 17 disappearing. That is a scary situation. Is he going to reappear or is he going to drop out?
Man, that is a tough break for Chuck McClure. You hate to see it. Oh no, there he is!
No! One of
Big
the worst
wreck.
scenarios you can have at a super speedway. A car reappearing inside of another car and a huge wreck out of turn 4.
Oh, it looks like the 28 car of Paglia taking a big tumble down to the inside. Seth, I think there might have been only 3 or 4 cars that got out of that unscathed. Unreal. That is a heartbreaker.
Closing in on what was going to be the final pit stop of the day. And I think you're right. I think it might have been those 3 cars of Seminara, Despirito, and Shelton who were trying to make the outside line work. And just about everybody that was up inside of the top 5 about 5 laps ago were caught up in that one. The 28, the 39, the 77. I saw Bob Dixon was involved. Oh, that is such a tough situation with the fact that when you're the 17 of Chuck McClure, more than likely he was still able to see everybody on his end, but everybody else was not able to know where the 17 was in relation to them. And unfortunately, he reappeared. I believe it was in the 28 of Mark Paglia.
That is such a tough break. So many guys were so fast up there. And yet, like you said, you can't blame the 17 of McClure for that. There have been many situations, I've been in them myself, where people are screaming, 6, you're gone, 6, you're gone, 6, we can't see you, but I can see everybody else around me. That's so heartbreaking, Seth. You hate to see something like that. Looks like cars are going to be starting to work their way down toward the pits.
I guarantee you that when that caution came out, just about everybody up here from first back through 7th probably dumped the clutch to make sure they'd have enough fuel to be able to make it around here to their pit stalls, as we're going to take a look and see just exactly what happened. And boy, you know, I think I jinxed him. Mark Paglia, the last 2 weeks have not been kind to the 28 car. Was running so well here today, trying to turn that luck around, and unfortunately just wrong place, wrong time. We say that at Talladega, but not normally for the reason that happened here, where he was in the exact spot the 17 reappeared.
Yeah, there was just nothing that you could have done. And you know, it just goes to speak. I really think that he probably saw those guys ahead of him, because not only did he appear in the 28 car, but he also appeared in the rear end of the 39. And that just tells me there's no way he would have been able to maintain that amount of speed by himself if he'd have warped out and all the other cars around him were gone. You just hate to see it, because Chuck had such a fast car. Everybody that was up there had such a fast car. And now we only have 3 or 4 cars left out on the racetrack now with no damage at all.
Yeah, Bob Dixon, John Godfrey, Perry Bond, Sonny Tallman, Dante Ricky, all involved in this one. I believe that the 08 of Glenn Harris might have gotten a piece. Dave Melson was in it. I mean, it'd probably be, like you said, easier to name off the drivers that were not involved in this wreck as opposed to those that were.
Yeah, it looked like Joe DeSpirito, Bob Seminara, and the number 90, as well as the number 9 of Elliot, the first off pit road. I thought I might have saw Elliot get caught up in that, but I'd have to go back and take a look again.
I think he was.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, though, that top 3, what did you refer to them earlier as? The Florida gang, Seth?
Yeah, the Florida boys.
The Florida boys. Now in prime position, because we're going to have a green flag now with less than 15 laps to go. Nobody's going to be worried about gas. Nobody's going to be worried about tires. The only thing anybody's going to be focusing on is trying to get past those 3 undamaged cars. And I'll tell you what, when you have a field full of damaged cars behind them, even though that's just 3 cars, that's going to be really, really difficult for anybody to get by them.
Yeah, right now, you know, you mentioned Chris Elliott. I think he did get a slight piece of that wreck. I think he made a little bit of contact with Sonny Tallman. Donnie Garrett got a piece of it. Dante Ricky got a piece of it. I think they may have just been harmless spins, but we'll have to wait and see. So, yeah, there are very few drivers behind that got through that wreck with minimal damage that may still be competitive. And look at these three guys up here, the 24, the 712, and the 90. We've already talked about the fact Espirito, 3 poles, no wins, but he's second in points, only 9 points out from Grant Wesley, so he's in perfect position to take the points lead, regardless if he wins here tonight. You've also got Bob Seminara. He is 8th in points, and you got Bernie Mobs 12th in points. So, I know these guys are obviously going to be working together as we get closer to the end of this race, but when we especially get into that point of no return where a caution would end the race, do all alliances go out the window?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. They could be Florida boys. They could be drinking beers with each other every night, all night long. But I'll tell you what, if they're racing back to that caution flag, every one of those guys wants to win. Joe DeSpirito with a 3rd place finish week 1, 4th place finish week 2. Bob Seminara, he had, let's see, where was he in week 1? He had a 20th place finish, undoubtedly probably got into a little bit of trouble. And then last week finished 3rd. These guys want to win. They have seen the front of the pack quite a bit. Both the first 2 races and now this one too. They're hungry, Seth. They want it.
You see cars going there to the outside. That is Glenn Harrison, the 08, and the 6 of Wiley Coate. Those are 2 drivers that are in position to get the lucky dog with the timing of that caution. Like Manny D and Bobby Farrell. I'm not sure if they're taking the wave around or not, but we should be getting the 1 to green signal this time by, and we've already stated these drivers good to make it on fuel. Now they're either racing for 1 or 2 laps. They're either racing to the completion of 62, to where that would be the furthest they could go where a caution would end the race, or if they manage to keep it green, they'd obviously be racing to the completion of 65, which would be the white flag, and they'd race back to the checkers no matter what.
Yep, and it looks like we've got our lucky dogs are going to be set first car. I can't see the 08, probably Glenn Harris, as well as Wiley Coate. They're going to be getting the lucky dogs, work their way back around, try to get back onto the lead lap here. They'll catch up at the tail of the field. Now, Seth, I know I said earlier that with those front 3 cars being undamaged, that they're going to have a clear advantage. Make no mistake, the end of this race is not going to be boring. It's still going to be exciting because those 3 cars alone, with the amount of cars that are still left behind them, they're not going to be able to just check out from the rest of the field. They're still going to have to work from this and keep those guys back here. One little mistake, I don't think anybody could question. The 77 of Garrett especially, he would jump all over that. Same with the number 9 and anybody behind them.
It'll be interesting here too, because you've got the 77 of Garrett, as you mentioned, the 9 of Elliott, the 84 of Ricky, the 94 of Shelton, the 143 of Dixon, the 13 of Melson. Do these drivers all have to formulate their own little alliance to be able to get around your top 3 possibly?
I think the alliance that you're trying to form right now is figuring out as best as you can who has the least amount of damage, because that's the car that I want to hook up with. That's the car that I need to go with to try to beat those undamaged top 3.
Well, Joe DeSpirito has been out in front for 10 laps here this evening. Second most, Josh Metallic, just before getting involved in that wreck, had led the most laps at 18. And we will be going back green with a total of 14 laps to go. We should bear in mind as well, we may not have seen our last caution of the day either. We could still see a yellow flag come out here before we get to the 10 lap mark from this point, which would be, of course, the point of no return of this race ending under yellow.
You know, Seth, I would love to see this race end under green, see them race to the start-finish line, but I think you're right. I don't think that's going to be our last yellow flag. I think that we're going to have guys really aggressively with 14 laps to go, trying to get up to the front, trying to get up to those fast 3. The Florida boys, they know those cars haven't taken any damage tonight. You want to work with them. If you can hook onto their back bumpers and stay ahead of the slower cars behind you, that's where you want to be.
That bright yellow 84, third on the outside line of Dante Ricky, is the only driver at this point in the field that is already locked into a playoff spot. The other driver, Grant Wesley, is not in the field tonight. So for any other driver, a trip to victory lane, if they can maintain 28th in the points, it's an automatic ticket into the playoffs. That's what's on the line as DeSpirito gets us back underway with 14 to go at Dega.
2 by 2. It looks like Seminara's not going to have a whole lot of help behind him at the moment. It looks like the 9's going to catch up to him just a little bit, but the 24 and the 90 with the clear advantage. Look how much that damage makes a difference. I think undamaged, Donnie Garrett would have stayed right on the back bumper of that 90 car as they took that restart, but it was so hard for him to even hang on to the back of his draft as they start to get single file down at the end of the backstretch.
We saw him move up there, try and get a push from Bob Seminara, then moved back down low. Look at the push Seminara's getting there, courtesy of Chris Elliott, the 712 with a lot of momentum around turns 3 and 4.
I'll tell you what, those 3 cars on the inside, they might be in trouble now. That is a huge line of cars working around them on the outside. It'll be really interesting to see if the 712 can get a good lead with the number of cars that are lined up behind him, and the 24 and the 90 and the 77 fall back through the pack. It'll be interesting to see what's going to happen with one undamaged car out front and the other 2 left mid to the rear of the pack. But it doesn't look like at this time that top line has as much of an advantage as what it did earlier tonight, Seth.
Not quite. Chris Elliott there in that 9 machine, though, missed the start of the season. Raced last week, subsequently finds himself 30th in points. So even a good finish here tonight would skyrocket him in the point standings. Jessica Shelton right there now in the 3rd position, trying to bring our winner from 2 weeks ago, Dante Ricky, along with her. And don't count out that 39 of Josh Metallic either. He may have gotten that rear end damage, may have gotten involved in that wreck, but that 39 still appears to be up to speed, right up there 4th on that outside line.
Yep, and you see they're starting to get a little dicey up at the front of the pack. Jess Shelton was starting to look to make a move on the 712. Seminara very wisely saw that Jess had that momentum, went down and threw that block. But that high line, man, they're itching. They're itching as we come up on 11 to go next time by. They know that they need to start making moves toward the front.
And one thing that we see happen so often at the super speedways is drivers on that inside line will see the outside line getting a run. They'll try and move up to be able to get a push from it and just mistime it. When we saw before, when Seminara swung around Despirito for the lead there in the center of the tri-oval, there was a 3-mile-per-hour difference. And that may seem minuscule to everybody watching, but when you're out there on track, that is a huge amount of time based off of distance.
It really, really, really is. Things happen in these races so fast. In the blink of an eye, you can have yourself in a great position, and next thing you know, you are completely out to lunch. And it takes far more time to make up that time on the racetrack than what it does to lose it, believe me.
All of a sudden, everybody has moved down to the defensive line, down against that yellow inside line. You got a couple of Dodges trying to make the second groove work again with Chris Elliott and Bob Dixon. They've got Billy Elliser back there as well, but they just don't have the numbers anymore like they did in the first 2/3 of this race.
No, they really don't. They really don't have the help. But it looks like Donnie Garrett and Josh Metallic working themselves up to the middle line at this time. If those cars behind them can get on their back bumper and give them a push, they might be okay. But if they can't maintain momentum, this top 5 on the bottom lane, they're going to check out. I think they're getting ready to go. They know that people are getting racy, and they know that they need to now be on the defensive up front because those guys mid-pack, they're heavily on the offensive.
Gracious, Joe Despirito, I don't know if he pushed up or if he was trying to tuck in front of the 77 of Donnie Garrett, but the hit boxes with these cars are so sensitive. We almost could have had a wreck there in turn 2.
Oh man, Donnie Garrett right on the right rear quarter panel of Shelton. It looks like he's going to maintain that momentum. It's going to be, really interesting to see. Does Seminara go up top to block the 77 or does he stay down with the 94? Garrett gets the run into the tri-oval. It looks like Garrett's going to be on his quarter panel as they come to the start-finish line.
Now, there is no side draft in Air 2003, so what Donnie Garrett was doing right there was pinching the 94 down because not only on that inside line do you have to check up for the car in front of you because you get such a run to the corner, but your car also wants to push up off the corner to be able to get that straightaway speed. With Garrett pinching Shelton down, he's taking away the momentum she would have had off the corner.
Okay, so my question for you, Seth. Shelton sees how fast that 77 is. Shelton's stuck behind Bob. Does Shelton hop up and see if the 77 will push her past the 712 car, or does she stay content riding behind that 712, knowing that he may be the fastest car on the racetrack right now?
I think for the moment she's content because I've talked with Jessica Shelton pre-race all season long. One car that she works very well with is that 84 of Dante Ricky. So I think what's going on right now, when Shelton steps out, Ricky will go with her, but she's trying to formulate when does she want to make that move on the 712 because we are closing in about 3 laps away from when we would hit that point of no return where a yellow flag would end the race.
Yes, we are. We are quickly approaching the end now. It looks like down the front straightaway and down the back straightaway, Reach is still pretty fast. You see the 712, the 94, and the 84 now all hooked up. That's good for their momentum, but it looks like that 77 and the 39, they're still quick. Don't count them out yet.
Absolutely, and I think we also may see, as we get closer to the end of this race, when that middle line starts to get a little bit congested, we may see a third line possibly start forming. But right now, Donnie Garrett still trying to get the outside line, at least up to the 4th position, still side by side with Despirito, but they're having a lot of trouble here on the straightaways, making the forward progress, which is really surprising because we saw even the outside line be at a little bit of a disadvantage to the inside line earlier on, and the middle line was still OP.
Yeah, it looks like that top line, it looks like they're making ground through the corners, but on these straightaways, they just don't quite have it. As we see the 24 now tucked up to the backside of the 84. Those guys are pushing as hard as they can down here, but they need to be careful as they approach the corners. One foul bump could send everything amuck, and we could see a replay of what happened just 15 or so laps ago.
Despirito there, move up a little bit, trying to crowd the 77 of Donnie Garrett, stifle that outside line's momentum as they remain still 4th position battling. Top 3 still single file as we are at 6 laps to go.
6 laps to go. They work their way down into turns 1 and 2. Garrett still having a really tough time making any ground on the 24 car. That bottom line looks really, really comfortable right now. But I can tell you who's not really, really comfortable right now. The 94 car, the 84 car, and the 24 car. Because they know they want to get by that 712 car. But they're pinned down there and they don't want to make a move and start losing ground before they have an opportunity to make the ultimate move and hopefully try to win the race.
Absolutely. You may have had somebody help push you to the front, but there's no guarantee that when you step out of line, they're going to go with you. You may get falling to the back, coming to that checkered flag. So it's all about timing for these drivers up here at the front of the field, as Seminara so far has led 15 laps. He's looking to get his first win of the season, be the 3rd driver to go to victory lane this season. He's about 4 circuits away, 4.5 here on the back straightaway from possibly doing it.
I'll tell you what right now, if I am 4th or 5th place, if I'm Joe Despirito or the number 90 car, man, I want to make this move, but I am terrified that I'm not going to have any friends to go with me. It's killer, Seth. It's really killer. The anticipation now. This is when these drivers start to get excited. This is when the adrenaline starts kicking in. This is when their hearts start thumping right out of their chest. They know that their opportunity to pick up a playoff spot and a victory is whittling away. They need to do it soon.
For the first 50 laps or so, they were diplomats. We are now into the point where a caution would end the race. It is all racer now for the drivers behind the wheels.
Coming off of turn number 2, there's only about 3.5 laps to go. It looks like Garrett once again has the run on the outside of that 24 car. He's trying to work up to the rear end of the 84 too, but he can't quite get there. He's got the 39 behind him. I thought Shelton was going to make the move to the outside in turn 3.
He got a big run, got right to the bumper of the 712, and instead pushed him into the corner, not making the move yet. And if you're Bob Seminara, I mean, how difficult has it got to be here closing in on the end of this race to keep one eye out the windshield and one eye in the rearview mirror to try and see where the run and where the move might take place?
Right now, these guys are so good at this that steering this car, making laps around the track is muscle memory. The 712, I guarantee you right now, he is mirror driving harder than he's ever had to mirror drive before, because he knows that he's got those 4 cars lined up single file behind him. But he also knows as we come to 2 to go this next time by, they're not going to keep staying that patient. He's got to start worrying now. Where's he going to have to block? Who's he got to worry about? Who's going to have the fastest car? Where's he got to go? It's not simple, Seth. It's not.
There's 13 cars up in this lead group right now. Any one of them, depending on what happens on these final 2 laps, could be the one coming around to receive the checkered flag, as right now looks like that outside line has kind of stifled out. Garrett trying to battle back, but he was back around 5th position, now trying to get back up to 4th, but they just don't have the numbers here. And at the moment, the only drivers that really could make a move would be Shelton and Ricky, because Despirito is boxed on that inside line.
Yep, Despirito is really boxed down there, and those cars on the outside line, don't forget they're at a slight disadvantage. They got into that crash. Shelton making the move on the outside going into turn 3.
Let's see if it works. She's got Donnie Garrett behind her. She's going to get alongside of the 712 of Seminara. Ooh, got a little squirrely there going into turn 3. Let's see if she can get the straightaway speed here. You mentioned the fact the 77 to 39, they've been involved in a wreck, but do they have enough pushing power to get that 94 to the lead? Coming to the white flag this time.
I'll tell you what, as they come through that trioval, Garrett's going to do everything that he can to push that 94 car. But I don't know if his car has quite enough. Riki all over the back end of Seminara, Despirito all over the back end of Riki. What's going to happen? I think we're going to see a whole new race in itself as we come down the last straightaway for the last time, Seth.
Riki is clear for second. Now he jumps up to the outside line to get a push from the 94. What does Seminara do? He's going to stay down low and pick up the 24 of Despirito. So it's going to be Riki and Shelton on the top side, Seminara and Despirito on the bottom. This could be one of those classic Talladega photo finishes if they hold it through the trioval.
They come out of turn 4, Seth. It looks like the Despirito car hooked up right on the back end of Seminara now, but Riki not done on the outside. He's got Shelton on his back end as they come down toward the checkered flag.
Gonna be a photo finish as Seminara on the bottom is gonna hang on. He'll get his first win of the season after leading the last 10 laps of this race. 3 races, 3 different winners, and Riki so close to being the first repeat winner on the season, but Bob Seminara gonna get it done. Started second, finishes first.
Man, what a race by Seminara. He did exactly what he had to do that last run. Once he got out front, all he had to do was watch what was happening behind him. He had the fastest car, aside from maybe Despirito and Mobs. But I'll tell you what a great race coming down to the checkered flag there, Seth.
Yeah, absolutely. This entire race, that middle line was so good on the straightaway. I was almost questioning Seminara's decision to stay on that inside line, but he apparently knew what cars he had behind him, how up to speed they were, and the inside line for maybe one of the few times today was king on the straightaway and got Seminara to the lead and eventually to the win. And with that, because of Bob Seminara, 8th in points coming into this race, he now, for the moment, has locked himself up a spot in this season's Talladega Challenge playoffs.
What a great run for Bob. You see, he's going to pull it down on the inside. He's going to do some donuts there. One of the best feelings in the world. These races, man, I'll tell you what, they don't really wear you out physically all that badly. It's not that much work. But mentally, these races are exhausting. And Bob Seminara had what it took. He kept his car in good shape, didn't get it banged up, and kept his car up front all race long. Paid off for him in the end.
And classic Talladega, where it's not really where you start, it's where you finish. Your top 2, Bob Seminara started second. Dante Ricci started all the way back in 27th, but it came down between those 2 drivers in the closing stages of this race.
I'll tell you what, coming out of week number 3, Dante Ricci has been really, really consistent. He's done really well. He was 4th in points, tied for 3rd coming into tonight's race. With that second place finish, that perseverance and just sticking to it and just working as hard as he could, he's going to be in good shape with points leaving Talladega tonight.
All he's got to do is make sure he remains in the top 20 in points to guarantee a playoff spot after his win 2 weeks ago. And there's a number of drivers here as well that, really needed good runs here today to just keep themselves up in the conversation points-wise. We talked about Donnie Garrett. He was 10th in points, finishing in 6th. Bernie Mobbs was 12th in points. He finished in 5th. So a lot of drivers making cases for themselves, even though it's a young season of being able to be contenders for this championship when we eventually get to the cutoff race for the playoffs.
Yeah. What a great race, Seth. How much fun was that? That was a lot of fun. You also look at the finishing order. Big shout out to Jessica Shelton with that 4th place finish. Donnie Garrett, Josh Metallic. We saw them get banged up pretty good in that crash, and they had quite the rebound there. It's unfortunate with that big crash because I don't think tonight's finishing order is quite indicative of, the amount of talent and the amount of entertainment that we got out of these guys with what a great race it was up until that point. But everybody leaves with their heads held high. They look towards next week, and they're going to look at the points again and figure out, okay, now that I made it out of week number 3, where am I going to be positioned at for week 4? Who am I going to have to focus on then? It's going to be a good season.
Definitely is. It's been an unbelievable start to the season. This is the second of the three races that has finished with the green flag and the checkered flag waving at the same time. Last week was the only race we've had so far where the caution has come out. And I'm looking here as well at the fact, we ended up having quite a number of drivers out of the race, but you brought up the point. Only two cautions in this race, and really the second one was kind of a freak accident, just based off of technical problems. So there's no telling that we might not have ended up having that thing go green all the way to the end if that caution hadn't come out from that point on.
For sure. And we saw the car that had the trouble there, the 17 of McClure. He was able to bounce back for a 15th place finish. So, it's good to see these guys do good. It's good to see them have a good, strong showing. Billy Elliser, who we talked to at the beginning of the race, he finished a solid 13th as well tonight. Again, Seth, I think it really came down to tonight. That 712 car had no damage whatsoever. The 24 and the 90 as well. I don't think it's any surprise that we saw all three of those cars finish in the top five.
Absolutely agree with you. No doubt about that. A clean car is a fast car, and these drivers definitely had a strategy worked out there on the final lap to be able to get Seminara his first trip to victory lane. And one of the guys that pushed him to the victory was Joe DeSpirito there through 3 and 4. And we're going to get some interviews with some of our top three finishers, and let's kick things off with our pole sitter, guy who brings it home P3 here tonight at Talladega.
Very fun.
Hey, Joe, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
I got you, Seth. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing great. First thing I want to ask you here is, we were talking about this pre-race. We'll get to the finish in just a moment, but man, you know how to start these races. 3 for 3 and starting on the pole this season. How in the world are you able to do it? I know there's an art to it, but how do you do it consistently?
Man, it's really just practice and staying calm. You're the only one on the track qualifying. You just got to worry about your line. Don't be nervous about anybody else's time. Just run your line, be smooth. It's all about being smooth. And yeah, I do have a little art to it. I can't share too much, but yeah, 3 for 3, baby.
Well, coming there into turn 3, you had the 712 ahead of you. He moved down low. Basically, his fate was in your hands there, whether he was going to be the first one back to the start finish line or not. How difficult is it being that car on the inside line, being the pusher? Because I know that the car second, third in line gets such a tremendous run up to the back bumper heading into corner entry. How difficult is it to try and get as close as possible, keep the draft as tight as possible, but not hook the car that's in front of you?
Yeah, there's a little bit of an art to that too. Coming in turn 4 on the last lap there, I I bumped him in a spot where you're really not supposed to bump somebody, but he was either going to win the race or get wrecked, and luckily he stayed straight when I hit him. And you got to give thanks to Bernie, man. Bernie came in late going into the trioval and pushed Bob to the win there. And then they went 3 wide, and that kind of sealed the deal. But yeah, you got to line up to the guy in front of you and just hope for the best there, and it all worked out.
Hey, Joe, it's Zach in the booth. Great race tonight, man. Great showing. 3 pole positions in a row, as Seth mentioned. That's now 2 third-place finishes and 1 fourth-place finish that you have this season through 3 races. Looking ahead of you, what is the plan? Do you keep running for points to keep trying to get to those top 3 spots? Do you think that working toward the end of the season here, you'll be ready to make a run for the championship?
That's what I'm going for. Excuse me. Yeah, it's all about being consistent. Top 5s are nice, and that's kind of what's good for points. But I'm hungry for that win. I'm getting the pole, but I want to finish up there too. Yeah, I'm leading the points right now, and hope to finish that way at the end of the regular season, and hopefully grab another title maybe this year. We'll see how it goes, but got a lot of good competitors out here, so it's gonna be a tight one again.
Yeah, for sure, Joe. It's good to talk to you, man. Good race out there tonight. Very well done. It was an exciting, fun race to watch, and good luck moving forward through the season.
Thanks, guys. You guys put on a good show. Thanks to you guys, RTG, my buddies Bob, Bernie. Thanks, everybody, once again. Good run. Very fun. Thanks again, guys.
As Joe DeSpirito, he brings it home 3rd place here tonight, and as you alluded to, Zach, his third straight top 5 finish of the season. At this point last year, Despirito, the defending champion, already had a win in the second race of the season, was a 4-time winner. So you get the feeling it's just a matter of time before we see that 24 in victory lane. A driver that we did see in victory lane, that was of course in the season opener 2 weeks ago, brings it home P2 here tonight, almost became the first repeat winner on the season. That's Dante Ricky. Dante, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Fly Racing Network Studios. You got us?
Loud and clear.
Well,
Oh my
man,
goodness.
I mean, you seem to pull off this type of strategy, which a lot of drivers have difficulty with, which is start at the back and work your way up to the front when it counts the most. I mean, how difficult is it in a 66 lap race to be able to time something like that?
Seth, tonight's race was absolutely crazy. All I'm going to say is I thought my race was over on the 8th lap. I got a tiny bit of right side damage on that first caution when the 011 and the 08 got together. And a few other people, were as a chain reaction getting involved, and the crash came down to my right side door. That was only one beat of the hammer on the right side, so I knew that I was good. I didn't have any real importance to that. But this was absolutely crazy because sometimes when you ride in the back, it does not always guarantee you will miss the crash. A lot of crazy racing and activity happened right in front of me tonight. And I was very fortunate not to get any damage in the second big wreck that Chuck was involved in. And, I just kind of was very patient. Restarted in sixth position there next to Donnie Garrett behind Jessica or in front of Jessica. And then she and I worked together very well in the last 20 laps. Um, I told her right away, you make your move when you have to try and win the race. And I wasn't clear of Donnie Garrett with 2 laps to go, so I kind of had to ride there on the bottom behind Bob and with Joe behind me, and I knew that Bernie was behind Joe. So I made a move that won me a lot of races back in season 49, and that was a move to the outside of the racetrack on the final lap on the back straightaway. And I know for a fact I made the best move possible that I could have done at that point in time, and I'm not questioning my decision to move to the outside. That was the best I could do. Otherwise, I'd be, stuck on the bottom and would be there for the finish. But I knew I had to try and win the race to get by Bob, but it was going to be difficult. It depended on who was behind me. And with Jessica behind me, I took a shot. But really good racing tonight. Good win to Bob Seminara. Good job to him. And really good move there with Joe Despirito. He did good also. So it was fun. I just I was a little confused why Donnie Garrett made that move up to the top of the racetrack. I think he would have had a better chance to, gain some positions if he had stayed in the middle. But I think it was going to be close anyway. It was going to be really close at the line, even if he stayed behind Jessica.
Dante, we know that really Talladega, Daytona, any super speedway, it's really all about timing. In the first race of the season that you won, we went caution free. We ended the race under green flag conditions. Last week, we ended under caution. With that kind of an X factor of not necessarily knowing which lap is actually going to be the last lap coming to the checkered flag, how difficult is it then to be able to decide this is when I've got to make my move?
It's very difficult considering that I like to make my moves on the back straightaway or turn two. And there are times where, due to the caution flag coming out, I'm forced to make a last minute split second decision. And, you know, those are the hardest things to decide as a driver. Do I need to make this move now or should I wait a couple more laps? And it is very tricky with those caution flags when you get under 6 and 5 to go that could possibly end the race. You never know what's going to happen next. And there is such a thing as making a move too early as well. So it was the best that we could do tonight, and I'm happy with my second place finish. Good win, Bob.
Hey Dante, Zach in the booth. Hell of a second place run for you there, man. You mentioned earlier on you got involved in that lap 8 incident, got a little bit of damage on your right side. After the second major incident, could you really feel the difference between those front 3 cars of the 24, the 90, and the 712 not having any damage as opposed to most of the rest of the field?
Yeah, it was certainly a different feeling, Zach. I will say that. The fact that Jessica and I were pretty much equal and I was able to really push her strong with Bob in front of her, it worked out very well. And I knew that they were 100% and I knew I was close to 100%, and it didn't bother me all that much. But certainly it felt a lot better to be in the front of the pack than it did in the back tonight.
I bet it did. All right, Dante, it's good to talk to you, man. Congratulations on a solid second place finish, and look forward to seeing you again Sunday or Monday night. All right, buddy?
Thanks, Zach. Good job on the broadcast tonight, Zach and Seth. Thank you.
That's Dante Ricky. He brings it home second place here this evening. A great run for our season opening winner. And let's now go down to victory lane. Bob Seminara is standing by.
Thanks for your help, bro.
Bob, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yes. What's up, guys?
Well, if we take a look here at your season, you've started second in all three races. Race one, little bit of an issue there. Didn't get the best finish that you were looking for. Third place last week, but here tonight, man, you drove your heart out, keeping the rest of the field behind you there. You had two lanes coming up behind you there in that final lap. How difficult was it to make the decision of which line to try and go with down the back straightaway?
Yeah, it was very difficult. Jessica pushed good. I knew she was going to pull out there and go for the win, and Dante hung in there as long as he could. Going down the backstretch, I did what I had to do, move up a little bit, and dove back down and going into 3. Joe got up behind me there, and Bernie, it was real exciting.
You came into this race running very well in the point standings, up inside of the top 10 already. And of course, the top 10 in the point standings end up advancing into the playoffs. But now you've got a win in the bank. You know that you've locked yourself up a playoff position. We see you like to keep that 712 car up front the entirety of the race. Does this change up the way you approach Talladega for the remainder of this regular season?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it takes a little pressure off because I won the championship 2 seasons ago. I don't think I won a race. So you got to get that win, get into the playoffs. And so I'm just going to be going even harder every week, knowing I got that, try to get some bonus points. And now the point standings do matter in the regular season for the seeding. So, yeah, I'll be doing it, and I'll be trying to get that pole too. I don't like starting second.
Hey, Bob, it's Zach in the booth. I'll tell you what, if you're tired of starting second, you and Joe better have a discussion, because I don't think he's going to let anybody win a pole at this rate.
Yeah, I know. We do have those discussions, but he didn't get me by much tonight. But it makes such a big difference coming out of the pits. So, I got to tighten that up a little bit, but it's fun.
Yeah, good win, Bob, man. It was a lot of fun to see you get up toward the front of the pack. Past season champion, as you mentioned, veteran of this series. We saw a lot of cars get in trouble. When you got up front with about 5 laps to go, I gotta ask you, were you driving more out of your mirror than you were the front windshield of your car?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I knew Jessica was right behind me. She deserves a win here, and she was going to do what she had to do. Dante was right there, and Joe, my guys were there. Bernie was there. So Donnie was working hard on the outside. That's all I was doing, was looking in the mirror. Josh had some damage. Chuck had some bad luck. So we had, it was a mix. I couldn't really tell who else was back there that was strong, but I saw Donnie on the outside.
Right on. Again, congratulations on a great win, Bob. It was good to see you up there. Really enjoyed watching you run, put on a show for those guys. Anybody out there you'd like to thank?
Yeah, I hope we did put on a good show. It sure felt like it, man. It's always exciting to win. I'd like to thank Flatout Racing for the broadcast. It puts that extra special. RTG and the owners, David Cannon, Terry, and Sean, all the admins that run this thing, FTMF, to my Florida boys, Bernie and Joe, and all the D's, Dude, Dave, Dan, Dave at work, all these guys that go on here to watch this great racing and put on a good show. Thank you.
Bob Seminara brings it home. P1 here in the third race of the season for the Talladega Challenge. Congrats once again on a tremendous victory there, Bob. Well deserved, and we look forward to seeing what you do here for the rest of the regular season, trying to, as you mentioned, get those very important playoff points by winning the regular season championship.
All right, thank you, guys. I'll be making it exciting. Thanks.
And so as Bob Seminara continues to celebrate his victory, as we mentioned, third driver to go to victory lane here this season. So we now know that Dante Ricky, Grant Wesley, and Bob Seminara look like they will be candidates for the playoffs. 7 drivers at this point in time would be able to advance in through points. And, I think it's this win very important for Bob Seminara as well on 2 counts. Last year, he was a 2-time winner, but his first win didn't happen until race 5, so a much earlier win here this season. Also, the fact as well, we mentioned Joe DeSpirito was the champion last season. Bob Seminara was 5 points away from being a back-to-back champion. So you think he wants a little bit of revenge here this season?
Yeah, I think Bob would really like to make a run at that championship. I'm looking at the unofficial point standings following tonight's race. It looks like DeSpirito is going to be on top in P1 in the points at this point. 3 points over Dante Ricci, 11 over Bob Seminara in third. So it looks like Bob's already thinking about making that run. It looks like we've got McClure in fourth, 15 points back, and Grant Wesley falling all the way to 5th place tonight, 19 points out of the point lead.
Of course, for Grant, having that win last week took a lot of pressure off of him, knowing he wouldn't be able to make tonight's race. And so he just has to keep himself now up inside the top 20 in points for that victory to count towards a playoff position. A number of other drivers moving up and down right around near that 10th in the standings cut line. Jessica Shelton moving into the top 10, up to 8th. Dave Melson dropping 3 spots down to 8th position. I know people might think it's way too early to start looking at this stuff down near the cut line, but what we're looking at right now at a battle for 10th place, if we have a couple more drivers go to victory lane, that could end up being a battle for around 14th in the standings, which is below the playoff cut line.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what a great race we saw tonight. I really enjoyed that, Seth. What did you think?
Oh, I mean, every time, it doesn't matter whether it's the Talladega Challenge or any of the RTG races, the one word that always comes up to mind is quality. Quality racing out of all of these drivers. They know what they're capable of doing. They're very familiar with the drivers around them, and that's why you see the type of racing that you do. Only 1 caution here in this race. I don't really count that second caution as anybody's fault because obviously it was a technical problem. And that is just what happens here in this type of races with RTG. Talladega, you think of a lot of cautions. You don't really see them often in this one, and just amazing caliber of racing that we see every single time that Flatout Racing Network broadcasts here with the RTG series. Zach, it's been a tremendous pleasure having you here in the booth. Been a lot of fun here doing the commentary with you, and I appreciate you joining me here tonight.
Yeah, you know what, Seth? I had a lot of fun doing this. I really appreciate you guys having me. Thank you, Seth, for being there, for being my partner in crime tonight. I'd like to thank Matt as well. Everybody out there watching FRN, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Great race. Tune in again next Thursday. These guys put on a show like this every week. They're so good, so much fun, so exciting. We're going to see what happens as we work toward the end of the season. But thank you again. Thank you, RTG, all the owners, the admins, all the drivers, everybody watching. You guys are great. This was a ton of fun. Maybe we should do it again sometime, Seth.
Absolutely. Would love that. We hope that everybody enjoyed tonight's event. Be sure to tune in this weekend. We've got a lot of different racing that's going to be going on here. The playoffs going to be continuing for Rapid Fire Pizza National Series. That's going to be tomorrow night. The Veterans of 4 & More Cup Series, they're going to be ending up having, I think it's their elimination race for the first round of their playoffs. That's going to be on Saturday. A lot of stuff coming up here on the weekend for Flatout Racing Network's coverage. But for Zach Fremont, I'm Seth Cole. Thanks for tuning in here this evening to the RTG Talladega Challenge. Bob Seminary, your winner, as you've been watching another broadcast here courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.